So yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting. Like you have that sports background. I do not. I was the person that was like selling Pokemon cards on eBay, right? So not exactly.
Uh, I food
Yeah,
store.
yeah, selling iPods. I'll say that for another podcast. But like the concept that we've been really learning over the past 6 to 12 months, and you can learn something in a book. We were talking about it last night. You can learn something in a book. Someone can tell you it, and you're like, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Totally makes sense. That's how you do business. And then you can go 6 years, fail a bunch, and then actually experience it firsthand and be like, oh, fuck,
That
that's what
makes
they
sense.
meant.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like one of the things that I think we've been bumping into recently is like having clarity of roles and people in the right role. And it might take you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different tries with getting a person in the right role. But when you do have that right role, they flourish, right? They do extremely well. And like, I think that's probably a very analogous thing for teams as well. Like there are different roles and positions. And I don't know how often it happens in football, but I've seen it in esports at least, right? League of Legends, where someone will play a specific role and then they end up flipping them to a different role and they just succeed a lot better. So like, how has that been, like you're leading Matter. This is one of the things that is most critical in a leadership role when running a company is like getting great people in, yes, but then also making sure that person is in the right seat. So like, how have you like evolved in that ability over the past X years?
Oh man, I mean, when we first started Matter, and I first was trying to figure out this concept of putting people on the right seat and titles, I was a little bit jaded from titles from coming from Goldman. At Goldman,
All the title thing, status,
like, status, really like your title, analyst or financial investment professional or vice president. Like, what does that really mean for me? And ultimately, it really doesn't mean much. So I was always a little bit from that structure. But what I learned from the time at Matter is kind of to what you're talking about, just like when you're building teams or sports teams, building a team, it is so critical to have clarity and understanding on who people are on your team and more specifically what their strengths and weaknesses are. And it's the same way with business. Like the reality is when you're looking at a technical team, and this is where a lot of companies that we see or have worked where, in my opinion, I don't think they do very well, is really assessing beyond, okay, what is the skill set, what is the framework that I'm trying to find this engineer be able to do, or what's this experience that product manager has from Google, versus being like, okay, who do I have on my team? What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? Being comfortable saying, like, these are your weaknesses, these are your strengths. I want to figure out a way to put you in a position to like sell by catering to your strength. And then I want to find people to come in to help pick up on your weaknesses. That's a key part of building a team. And like any person who's ever played team sports or have built a team from a sports perspective or has been on one will be the first one to tell you that is very wrong. Played a lot of football in my life now. And one of the first things you have to do to really come together as a team is be willing to accept each other for who you are and understand where your flaws and your strengths are, to come together, try to be as strong as you can, be as one unit. It's the same thing in business, right? Utilizing titles comes very handy in bringing clarity and accountability for people's roles. Sometimes titles are more just for external purposes, right? The way that we try to utilize them in Matter have been more as an indication of what is your responsibility and expectation for that job. And I think it's gone fairly well, but even with Matter being such a small company,
I like 25 or something.
yeah, we're 25 people now, due to everything happening in the economy, it's been a little bit rough from kind of where our peak size was. I think we were at like 42. So we stepped back a significant amount, but even in a company of 50 people, titles still are a little in terms of how it really puts people in a good direction, because people are required to wear a lot more hats. You're touching a lot of different areas in a business when you're that small of a company versus if you're 1,000-person company, having that total alignment and clarity over your role and your title being an indicator of that brings a lot more stability and balance for scale. Right. So it's been an interesting thing to figure out in my journey, because I kind of went from like, in the early days of Matter,
fuck titles, right?
Yeah,
we
were so flat, right?
Yeah,
You believed in that too.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Our mentality was like, fuck titles, like it's not really adding any benefit. We're a very flat organization, and we're still very flat in the way that I think people are able to put in input and help make decisions and like, from that perspective. But I do think that like bringing clarity, accountability, structure, clarity, and kind of the chain of command, things of that nature, titles become very important, you know?